What is Lost, What Has Been is an exhibition of photographic works by John Paul Evans, a combination of pre-existing work and new pieces made for this exhibition at Mission Gallery. John Paul Evans's work often explores themes of homosexuality and Christianity, work which feels especially at home in Mission, with its history of being repurposed Seaman's Mission. The gallery's former life is evident in its architecture as we move from the shop into the entrance of the space. The large square room, which is the size of a small chapel, has a tall, high-domed ceiling constructed from black painted timber and a grey painted wooden floor. Many photographic prints of John Paul Evans's work line the white painted, windowless walls. The wall facing us as we enter the gallery has a large archway that leads into the apse, a smaller domed space with small windows. As we turn round to the left wall, we face the first body of work, today's lesson, a 4x4 grid of 16 black and white photographs hung on the wall, each sized about 33 by 33 centimetres and framed in a white square frame. The photographs reference 7 biblical texts that are cited to condemn homosexuality. Each image a staged, performative scene portraying ideas of queerness acted out by John Paul Evans and his partner Peter. There is a huge amount of tonal contrast and drama in these photographs. The shadows are rich and deep, and the highlights bright and crisp. Of the 16 photographs, 8 depict a close-up shot of a Bible page containing a passage cited to condemn homosexuality. In most of these Bible page images, Peter's white, older, wrinkled hand reaches down from the top left corner of the frame, gesturing at the passage of text, whilst John Paul Evans's younger, white hand reaches towards the text from the bottom right of the frame. The words on the page are blurred and out of focus, except for the passages gestured to by the disembodied hands, which are clear and legible. The hands reach into the frame towards each other, sometimes stretching and reaching for one another, sometimes gently placed in more delicate gestures. They never meet, the passages of text that lie on the page a barrier between them. In one image, Peter's hand lies palm up, his fingers relaxed and slightly curled, whilst John Paul Evans's hand stretches into frame and points with his index finger to a passage that reads, "If anyone lie with a man as with a woman, both have committed an abomination. Let them be put to death." It's almost jarring to see such calm, gentle hand positions gesturing to these extreme condemnations. It's as if the hands are so fatigued by these remarks that they are no longer riled up by them. Interspersed among these images of biblical texts are 8 staged photographs of John Paul and his partner Peter performing scenes and ideas related to queerness. On the top row, the second and fourth images are reminiscent of still life paintings. The second image shows a tabletop scene. On the left in the foreground is a white Victorian jug with floral decoration, full of dead and dying flowers. To the right of the frame is a ceramic figurine of a couple in an embrace. Dead flowers are scattered around the table these ceramics rest upon, evoking the floral wallpaper behind. At the back of the table, 2 miniature figures stand in the centre of the image against the wall. This is our first glimpse of the full figures of Peter and John Paul Evans, wearing crisp black suits, white shirts and black ties. Peter stands on the left, white, balding and with a white beard, whilst John Paul Evans stands a bit taller on the right, white with short dark hair. They stand rigidly with blank expressions, hands clasped in front of them. In the photograph they've been shrunken down to stand on the table, as if they've become ceramic figurines themselves. The fourth image shows a similar tabletop scene. The camera seems to be resting on a wooden table, and in the centre of the image against the floral wallpaper is a little ceramic figurine of a house. Shrivelled flower petals litter the table, a little pathway cleared in the centre leading up to the house. Either side of the house stands 2 pairs of 2 fingers, the rest of the hands they belong to disappearing out of the frame. The fingertips point down to touch the table, each of them wearing a tiny pair of black shoes, standing in them like feet so the fingers look like figures. They face each other as if they're standing at the altar. In the second row of images are 2 photographs of Peter and John Poole, but they're to scale this time. In the first image in the row, the 2 suited figures sit facing us at a round table covered in a floral tablecloth, with a black curtain backdrop behind them. They sit identically with their hands clasped together, resting on top of the table in front of them. Their faces are covered by masks of 2D printed photographs of pansies, referencing the flower's use as a derogatory term used to describe effeminate gay men. 2 frames along, we see Peter and John Poole in masks again, but this time they're visible from the waist up, standing facing the camera with their arms around each other in a dancing pose. Upon first glance, something seems off about the image, until you realise these figures are also wearing printed masks, but of their own faces. The eyes give it away by the empty cutouts where the pupils should be. In the third row, second image along, the camera looks down upon a white bedsheet with 2 classic white vests and 2 pairs of white men's briefs laid out side by side. In the centre, where the 2 vests touch, lies a little woven grass ornament with a small heart on top. The sheets and underwear are creased, and 2 slight indentations lie above the vests, leaving the impression of Peter and John Poole having lied there in those garments just a moment before, their presence lingering on the sheets. In the last image in the row, the camera looks down onto a table covered in dead flower petals. A hand reaches into the frame from the top right corner, palm up in a relaxed position, with a black heart outline drawn onto the centre of the palm. Another pair of hands reaches in from the bottom right corner, the right hand holding the heart-decorated hand, whilst the left points its index finger to the heart. In the first image of the bottom row, the camera is looking down onto the floor. In the bottom half of the image, a rug partially covers a patterned carpet. 2 pairs of feet stand side by side in black leather shoes at the back of the frame. On the floor, in front of the left feet facing them, is a book titled Against the Law by Peter Wilderblood, and next to it, in front of the right feet, a floral decorated postcard with the words, "My dear sweetheart." The last photograph shows Peter and John Paul Evans in their suits again, but they stand facing a wall decorated in botanical print, their suited backs to the camera. As we turn right to the next wall, we come to the next body of work, In the Sweet By and By. The work is hung on the 2 longest walls in the gallery, with the left and right walls having several images across them facing each other, and a few other images on the walls by the apse and opposite doorway. This body of work explores melancholy, loss, and memorial. John Paul Evans began creating the work after the loss of his father's friend, who was known as a confirmed bachelor, an old-fashioned term often used to describe a gay man who wouldn't pursue a traditional heterosexual marriage. He was a friend and mentor figure to Evans growing up, and the loss affected him deeply. The piece soon became more about loss in general after the death of his mother and close friend, turning into a collection that remembers the specific people he has lost. Evans describes the creation of this work as a sort of therapy and catharsis, but also states that he isn't using it as a way of getting better. He doesn't want to let go of or fully come to terms with the loss, instead wanting to hold on to a level of mourning. Where today's lesson was all in black and white, these images are vividly coloured and vibrant. There are 2 rows of 6 photographs on this wall, 12 in total. The first top left image shows an aerial view of an old-fashioned photo mount with yellow floral illustrations, in the centre of which a rectangular cutout reveals a page of handwritten text in calligraphy that reads, "To my dearest D, when we meet in the sweet by and by." This references the hymn In the Sweet By and By, which John Paul Evans heard at his father's friend's funeral and brought back memories of his childhood in a religious upbringing. Surrounding the outer edge of the frame is a border of dried purple and yellow flower petals. Below this image, and in 4 other frames on this wall, is a photograph of white fluffy clouds against a vivid blue sky. The blue is so deep and vibrant it looks idyllic. These repeating photographs of clouds in slightly different formations, but always against this blue background, give a sense of this sweet by and by, and ties into the Christian beliefs and ideas of heaven being skyward. In the next column of images, we see another skyscape, and below a recoloured old photograph of a boy. His hair is neatly parted and combed in an old-fashioned style, and he wears a suit, waistcoat and tie, perhaps uniform. He wears a slight smile. In the next column, the bottom row holds another skyscape. Above it is a photograph of two hands, each one reaching out from the left and right of the frame in the middle, where they meet against a blurred background of greenery. Together, the two hands hold a forget-me-not stem that branches into two stems of blue little flowers. The next column holds the largest images of the two rows. Above, there is a larger landscape sky photo, and below it we see the suited figures of John Paul Evans and Peter, but in colour this time. The photograph shows a beautiful river with a blue hazy sky. This is perhaps the River Otter near Evans's home, a place he writes about being a point he often thinks about the people he's lost at. To the right of the image, a small wooden platform emerges out of the green bushes, upon which Peter and John Paul stand. They again stand in their black suits and ties with white shirts, hands clasped in front, looking straight-faced into the camera. John Paul and Peter's recurring appearances throughout the exhibition, always in the same expression and outfits, makes them look like reappearing spectres or funeral directors. John Paul describes these suits as a neutral male uniform, not giving away too much individual personality, whilst also embodying the British stiff upper lip mentality. In the next column, the top square image is an aerial view, showing a pile of dead brown and green leaves and yellow flower buds scattered upon a dark wooden table. Two hands again stretch palms up into the shot from the left and right, meeting in the middle where the left hand rests on top of the right. On top of their palms, a pile of dead yellow roses lie. Below this photo is a smaller, old-fashioned portrait photo coloured in sepia. A lone figure stands in the centre of the photo, surrounded by leaves and foliage that seems to have overgrown the buildings he stands next to. The figure is an older white man wearing a black uniform with circular white buttons down the front and a matching cap. The cap and collar of the top read TVR in capital letters. The man stands in a military stance, standing tall with his hands by his side. The last column of images on this wall shows a cloudscape in the top row, and below it is still life. The image shows a photograph of a wall of orange and white floral wallpaper, with a pale green and pink floral curtain on the left. In the bottom right corner, a brown wooden tabletop is visible. Upon it sit several large seashells of different varieties, and a glass vase containing again dead, dried-up purple flowers. Behind this table on the wall in the top centre right hangs a painting of a river stretching into the distance, a farmhouse and animals visible around it. On the left side of the riverbank are two small figures of John Paul and Peter in their black suits, barely visible in the painting and overall photograph. As we turn to the right to face the wall with the archway leading to the apse, there are three photographs. To the left of the apse archway is a large landscape photograph of a grassy overgrown hill with a small worn-down cottage in the background that looks reminiscent of the house in the painting on the wall in the previous photograph. Some of the wild overgrown grass has been mowed to create a path leading up to the house, and on the path stands Peter and John Paul in their suits and hands clasped in front again. To the right of the archway are two images above one another. The top image is another photograph of clouds, but this one is very different to the previous ones. Rather than the bright, brilliant blue sky and crisp white clouds of the former images, this one shows a sky at sunset. The sky is a darker blue at the top of the photo and grows into a golden yellow at the bottom of the frame, the clouds the golden colour of sunset to match. Below this is a square image of a wall covered in pale wallpaper with little blue, pink and yellow flower print. Golden light of sunset shines onto the wall, the silhouette of a window and the figures of Peter and John Paul Evans casting a contrasting shadow onto it. As we turn to the wall on the right, there are 10 fairly large, mostly square images hung across it. 7 of them sit in a row, the other 3 hanging either below or above. The first in line from the left is a densely packed image. we face a small round table covered in a burgundy, densely patterned fabric, its busyness enhanced by the black floral embroidered curtain that hangs behind it as a backdrop. Upon the table are 2 photo frames. On the left, a brown wooden frame with a photograph of Peter and John Paul in their black suits again, but this time they stand at a 3/4 angle to the camera instead of head-on. They both have white feathered angel wings and hold a single white rose each. Their gaze falls out of their frame to the second framed photograph on the right of the table, a black and white image of a white woman in a white dress with dark hair, both of a 60s style. Her photo lies in a white frame carved to look like dozens of roses. She looks out to the edge of the frame, seemingly unaware of the angels in the frame next to her. In between the 2 frames lies a bunch of flowers, white cow parsley and purple and white crocuses. In the next photograph we have a yellow floral wallpaper, upon which hangs a green oval with an ornate silver oval frame inside. Within the frame is an image of John Paul and Peter, their heads and the tops of their torsos looking out at us, with a bright blue cloudy background behind them. The surface of the oval is slightly marked and tarnished, as if we're looking into a mirror. Next in the row we have 2 images on top of each other. Above we have another cloud image, the sky inside a darker blue. The contents of the image below seem to emerge from darkness, with no visible backdrop or walls. On the left there is a small wooden table with a pile of purple, yellow and white dried flower petals on top. To the right of this table sits a glass dome, inside which stand the winged flower-holding versions of Peter and John Paul as miniatures. To the right of them, an ornate wooden square frame with gold trim hangs slightly at an angle. A disembodied hand reaches out of the frame, holding a large metal, highly decorated key towards the couple. In the next photo, we have another aerial shot of an illustrated photo mount decorated with daisies, the edges of the image covered in a mixture of yellow, pink and green dried flowers. This image mirrors the first image with the photo mount of the collection, but instead of text inside the photo mount, we have a small photograph of a church in the distance and a little path leading up to it surrounded by lush green grass. Standing in the bottom right on the path are Peter and John Paul in their suits and familiar poses. To the right of this image is a column of 3 images hung in a vertical line. On top we have another photo of a deep blue sky and wispy clouds. Below in the central line there is another photograph with a shadowy black backdrop. In the centre of the frame stands a glass vase with 3 white lilies in bloom and 1 closed bud, all from the same stem. White lilies signify rebirth and are often chosen for funerals. The vase sits upon a white doily on a small wooden round table, and in front of the base of the vase stands a small white horizontal postcard with pink, blue and green floral embroidery. The postcard reads, "To my dear sweetheart." Below this image hangs a shot looking down on the floor. The floor in this image is covered in autumn dead leaves, and 2 pairs of shiny black shoes stand at the back of the shot. In front of the shoes, on the left facing them, and upside down to us, is a white leaflet of sheet music titled Home Sweet Home, and to the right of that is a dark blue sheet music booklet titled When We Meet in the Sweet By and By. Between them lies a bunch of dead purple crocuses. The next image in the row uses the same table as the lilies, the tabletop visible in the front of the shot. A different glass vase sits on a doily on the table this time, but inside are a bunch of dying crocuses similar to a bunch from a previous photograph. Out of focus in the back of the shot sit Peter and John Paul in their suits against a blue, cloudy sky backdrop. The last image on the wall shows a dark wooden mantelpiece with a William Morris-style floral wallpaper behind it. On the left is a blue ceramic candle holder, and on the right a small ceramic figurine dressed in yellow. In the centre stands an extravagant gold photo frame with 2 windows. In the left window stands Peter, and in the right John Paul, both with their angel wings again and suits. Both stand holding a single stem of a white lily with 3 flowers in bloom. If we turn to the right, hanging on the wall next to the entrance is the last photo in this collection. A white, lightly floral printed wallpaper has a wooden frame hanging on the right, the sides of the frame extending to form crosses reminiscent of Christianity in each corner. Within the frame stands a shot of Peter and John Paul with their angel wings, hands in prayer in front of them. Extending from the bottom left of the photograph towards the framed duo is a pair of hands gently cupping a blue butterfly. If we turn around to face the archway at the back of the gallery space leading to the apse, we come to the last collection in this exhibition, What is Lost, What Has Been. John Paul Evans describes it as a visual soliloquy to absent friends, people I considered my family, acting as an extension or coda to In the Sweet By and By. The apse is a small arch-shaped room with a lower ceiling than the main space. Upon entering, we are met with 5 plinths that stand like 5 figures in a U-shape. 5 square images in frames stand on top of each of the plinths. 3 small arch-shaped windows sit on the wall above the plinths, adding natural light to the room. Evans describes his motivations for making this work as being inspired by the family album and how staged and performative photos within it often are, whilst also serving as a memento and record of people we care about, often triggering memories. With the death of so many people he cared for, Evans realised he didn't have many photographs of him and his partner of decades, Peter, together. Becoming increasingly aware of their own mortality, with Peter being 30 years his senior, he began to create work exploring the sense of mourning and grieving someone before they are gone. The 5 images look similar to still-life paintings in their composition. The first image from the left shows a tabletop scene of framed images and a book. A blue floral wallpaper acts as a backdrop, with a dead flower petal strewn table at the bottom of the frame. On the left of the table sits an old worn leather-bound book, possibly a Bible suggested by a white cross pendant that lies on top of it. To the right of this is a silver-framed photograph. Inside the frame is a black and white photograph from the shoulders up of a white man with short light hair and no beard. He is topless and wearing several pendant necklaces. He looks like he could be a younger Peter. He looks up towards the top left of the image as if he is looking out of his frame towards a green framed illustration of an angel hanging on the left of the wall. The winged angel floats on a blue background, one hand holding a cross and the other a sword. The next plinth holds a photograph of a brown wooden table, upon which stands 3 old photographs against a pale floral wallpaper. The table is strewn with dried burgundy rosebuds. At the back of the table, in the centre, stands the largest photo in a dark metal frame, the old sepia photograph of a man in a TVR uniform from In the Sweet By and By. To the right, in a smaller, similar frame, is the old recoloured portrait of a young man from the series, and to the left is another old sepia photograph of a portrait of a man in a suit, smiling slightly at the camera. The setup makes it look like a shrine almost, like a dedication to 3 people lost. On the third plinth is another lighter wooden tabletop, upon which stands a glass vase of pink, white and purple tulips, tightly packed in, equal parts green stalk and flower. The vase stands on a small wooden coaster with a dark, shadowy backdrop behind. Tulips signify deep love, be it romantic or towards friends and family, feeling especially poignant in the centre of these 5 images. The next plinth shows an image looking down upon a wooden table, atop which lies a pile of old photographs and documents. Glimpses of different photos are visible, a National Service Act card from 1939, glimpses of black and white photos of men on holidays at the beach, in hotels, a collection of fond memories perhaps. On top of a pile of photos in the centre is an old shriveled yellow rose, its petals scattering over the pile. The last plinth shows a still life from slightly further back than the others. A yellow wallpaper illustrated with faded fruits and leaves has 3 wooden framed photographs hung on it. In the centre is a large wooden frame and mount, within the centre of which is a sculpted white material profile of an older man. On the left and right of this frame are 2 identical wooden square frames, the one on the left containing a portrait of Peter from three-quarter view, his body and gaze slightly turned towards the central frame. Mirroring this on the other frame is John Paul Evans, a forlorn expression upon his face. Below the central frame stands a wooden table, upon which a tarnished copper vase with two arms stands on the left. To the right is a miniature model of 3 white plinths, and in the centre a large glass vase of small white flowers, their buds scattering onto the tabletop. As we move to leave the apse, hidden in a little nook to the side is one last plinth, separate from the others. An incredibly rich and dramatically contrasting square print is housed in the plinth, showing a photograph of Peter and John Paul from the waist up, with Peter on the left. They stand side by side, deadpanned expressions in their classic uniform of a dark grey suit, the difference this time being they wear black veils over their heads like mourners. The veils are so thin and subtle it's easy to miss them at first, their presence only visible from close inspection. This last confrontation with John Paul Evans and Peter really shows off Evans's skill as a photographer. The textures of the netting, skin and suits are beautifully captured in such an attention-grabbing image. Peter's continuous deadpan expression throughout the exhibition brings a sense of comedy to the melancholic subject matter of the work, whilst also ending on a slightly mournful note.